What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you, and one that is going to be challenging to describe.
Very.
Because this is up there with one of the more nuts listens I've had this year. So we're going to go over the debut album from Till the Dirt, Outside the Spiral. This comes out also on the 25th of August on Nuclear Blast Records. It's been formed in 2020 in Florida, I would guess, because this is essentially entirely the work in terms of like the writing of Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. And this was something that he was working on during the lockdowns, the pandemics, and he was writing stuff for a different project, and man, did he create a very different project here. In terms of more information on this, I strongly recommend checking out Gas Masks and Hand Grenades. He did an awesome interview with Kelly Schaefer, and Kelly answered a lot of questions about this because after listening to this, and I've even heard the demo tracks of this earlier, I have even more questions because this is legit nuts, and honestly, I don't think I'll hear anything that sounds like this the rest of the year, if I had to guess.
Yeah, it is a myriad of sounds, but not really what you think either. Like, it threw me for a loop, especially because of who's on this record. Not only is it the writings of Kelly Schaefer, but the guest spots that are on here would allude to something completely different from what it is. I'm talking about like Steve DiGiorgio, Jeff Loomis, John Longstreth. Like, so right off the bat with those people, you think it was going to sound a different way, but it's a weird spattering of kind of a mixture of like the craziest artists that you could smush into one sound.
Yeah. This is, well, not only outside the spiral, outside the box. In terms of the influences, at least, in terms of talking to Kelly, a lot of this was, written, again, during the pandemic, and no one's in the best headspace during that time, I would say. But he wanted to do something that didn't sound like Atheist, and this doesn't sound like Atheist. Like, you get spots, because Kelly's technical playing and writing is still very much here. It's just in a different facet, because this is such a blend of genres, where Atheist is, very much like a death thrash, progressive metal sort of blend with jazz fusion elements, like, very much along the lines of Cynic too. This is, man, honestly, all right, some of the heaviest stuff that he has ever done, and also some of the most different stuff he's done, like even touching back to his days with Neurotica. We have like Alice in Chains, like kind of 90s rock grunge, and mix that with like 90s death metal and thrash metal, and just whirl it up into the most chaotic sounding album you will probably listen to this year.
Like, we'll just get started off. The opening song, Starring Roll, kind of sounds like Carcass and Alice in Chains, but sonically like Strapping Young Lad with down riffs and an arch enemy lead.
Yes. Yeah. Process all that. It's weird. Honestly, listening to this album, and we were just listening to Strapping Young Lad's Alien not too long ago, a lot of comparisons to Strapping Young Lad, especially around Alien and City. This has an energy, a vibe to it, and it's unnerving, unhinged, and crazy. You have vocals coming at you from every conceivable angle with lots of different filters. And Kelly is, showcasing more than his ability to scream his guts out. He's showcasing a lot of clean singing, especially on As It Seems, which has an absolutely infectious chorus. Like, very Alice in Chainsy. But at the same time, you have these vocal freakouts. Like, again, Devin Townsend circa Alien, where they're just coming at you and they're, shrinking manic rage and hellish introspective nightmares at you.
Well, the cleans sound like Mike Patton, but then the screams sound like anytime Chino does that scream kind of freak out thing that he does. So you got like Deftones screams with Mike Patton singing.
And one of the other interesting things about this, and it kind of ties into this whole like 90s vibe of it, is the person that produced this is one Scott Burns. I mean, he co-produced it with Kelly, but Scott Burns has been pretty much absent since God, I think Suffocation's Despise the Sun.
Yep.
I think that was the last thing he did, and that was in 1998. He has returned to the mixing board, and, well, I mean, it sounds like a Scott Burns mix, but it also sounds, I don't know, like, different. Like, there's a weird kind of mud to it.
Yeah, well, like a fuzz. And there's a fuzz over everything, so it's not just guitars in this case, it's over the vocals, it's over the drums. And the drums, as thin as they sound, they're still present.
Oh, yeah.
It's weird.
The bass drum in particular is very punchy on here, and man, all right, let's get into the musicianship. The musicianship, I mean, with all the stuff that is going on in here, it has to be, like, top-notch, and it really is. Like, in terms of, like, transitions alone, in terms of, like, just metal transitions, like, shifting from blast beats to grooves to breakdowns to, you know, D beats and shit, that can already be kind of chaotic and technical in terms of, like, putting that together. This is transitioning genres frequently, and it's absolutely nuts. It's very cathartic and chaotic, but somehow this really does come together in its own weird way. Like, this is a strange listen.
Much like when Necrotic reviewed Sleep Token and talked about genre meshing and how it didn't work. This is how it does work.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like prog, but it's not. But it is. It's not necessarily structured like a prog song, but it jumps around like a prog song would.
That was something that I came to listening to this. Like, there's a lot of, like, more contemporary styles done here. Again, like, 90s rock, kind of groove metal, death metal, thrash metal, but it's kind of done with, like, a prog mindset. Like, let's turn it on its head. Let's make it a little bit strange. Like Invitation. There's this strange sort of, like, staticky vibe, especially to the vocals, and there's some really interesting, samples and atmosphere. It opens up with, like, a really groovy, chuggy riff, and then you have a police scanner in the background.
Radio chatter or something.
Yeah, I think it's a police scanner, because it sounded like some redneck shit. Like, oh, man, he's fucking doing meth in the front lawn again. Florida. Anyway.
Sure.
But it's cool how that chatter blends into Kelly's vocals, which he has sort of that kind of squawky sort of speaker box sound to him. And this whole song kind of has that weird atmosphere. And as it goes on, like, it kind of just sticks with this sort of, like, almost ministry kind of godflesh, albeit, like, again, like, kind of closer to a strapping young lad too. But then you have this hard shift to a black metal tremolo with a soaring thrash lead on top of it. So, I mean, in terms of, like, the combinations here, they're wild. But again, with, the musicality, in terms of, like, the delivery, it actually works.
And that same sort of thing picks up later with Forest of Because and Who Awaits. Both kind of doomy, sludgy things. Like, dude, the riffs in Who Awaits are straight weird, sludgy things, but with Alice in Chain vocals.
Yeah, there's a lot of sludge metal on here. Like I imagine the idea was kind of go for, like, a, like, kind of 90s hard rock. Again, I know Kelly's a big fan of Alice in Chains, but, who isn't? I mean, people that are wrong, they aren't. But the whole tone, the thickness of the, just kind of, it has a more death metal tone. Like, honestly, it kind of reminds me of the guitar tone on, like, Morbid Angel's Covenant. Like, it's thick, it's murky. It kind of makes it sound more akin to sludge metal. And the breakdowns in here, especially with the larger, like, single chord droning riffs, which there are a lot of those on here, and again, like, adds to the atmosphere. Unbelievably heavy. And I was reminded again that Kelly said that this was going to be, like, one of the heaviest things he's ever done, and I believe him. I believe him a lot.
It actually gets heavier on the track you think it would, for a change. Insistent Demand, which features John Longstreth from Origin, who's a monster of his craft.
Absolutely. Yeah, he lets you know it's John Longstreth.
Like, there's no denying that it's him when it kicks in. But it's weird because they have one of the world's, in my opinion, craziest and fastest drummers play over the most slow, droning, dreary, doomy riff on the album.
Yeah, I mean, you have some spots where it does pick up in terms of the riffing, but a lot of it are these big, single, heavy chords with, like, sort of a dissonant sort of backing behind them, and Kelly just freaking out and raving behind it. And it just creates this cool contrast, and contrast is a huge thing on here because you have a lot of stuff that I think would collide under a lot of different circumstances. Again, like, clean Alice in Chains vocals over, like vicious blast beats, Morbid Angel tremolos, black metal sections, flat out sludge metal. I mean, that would probably fit a little bit more, but yeah, there's a lot of interesting contrast. And again, as we kept listening to this album, it really just kind of started opening up.
Yeah, it was weird because in the beginning I was like, what the fuck is happening? Because it just encompassed so many things in the first couple songs. I mean, we're talking just everything. And very like 90s sounding.
Very.
But when you get down to Insist and Demand and then beyond there, it just opens up into like this heavy metal, death metal opus kind of.
Yeah. And again, like the atmosphere in here, I don't know, like it's just very unnerving. Like, I don't know, like it's like a mental breakdown.
It's unsettling.
It is.
It sounds like someone that was trapped inside during the pandemic that didn't have any fun at all.
It's claustrophobic, like the walls are surrounding you, and every conceivable wall is making interesting noises, in this case, very heavy noises. But the thing that keeps it kind of grounded is songwriting, and again, like kind of hooks that come out of nowhere. Like The Good, The Bad, The Other. That song kind of squeezes in a cool, catchy chorus amidst all of the twisting chaos that is going on in there. You have like very thrashy riffs, but there's like dissonant tags at the end, and amazing shreddy leads, which the lead work has a ton of variety on here. I mean, there's a ton of variety in this entire album, but the lead work is really interesting because sometimes it fits perfectly like you would expect, and then sometimes it just kind of goes off the rails and gets really strange in a song that you would expect, like, oh, that's going to have a soaring melodic lead. I think the whole thing on here was no rules. And yeah, I don't feel that there were many rules in terms of like the construction of this.
As far as negatives, it's a hard album to gauge.
Yes.
Like, I thought the production was, again, that overall fuzz that's on everything. Like, granted, it's Scott's first album that he's worked with in, 24 years, 25 years? I mean, that's a long time to go on a hiatus and come back. So, I mean, it's not really a complaint. And then again, even though I thought the mix was kind of fuzzy and odd, by the time you get to the middle, maybe even towards the end of the record, for me personally, it grew on me.
Yeah.
And it sounded like it was normal. I think it's a little scatterbrained, but I also think that that's the point.
That's kind of the appeal.
Back when you say things like having no rules, like obviously if there's no rules, like, okay, this sounds like a scatterbrained kind of cornucopia, if you will, of just sounds and different ideas and different thoughts. And as much as that can be confusing, I've listened to music like this for a lot of years. So, I mean, it's less confusing when you think of it in the perspective of a musician standpoint. Like, I get it. I don't necessarily get it, but I get it.
Yeah, no. At times, this is like the musical equivalent of giving a fucking 8-year-old a 2-liter of Mountain Dew and throwing him in a bounce house. Yeah, it's going everywhere and just wrecking shit. And at times I would say it can be sensory overload. Like, again, the vocals coming in from different angles, all the layers, the frequently changing, shifting, everything about this album can be a bit much. And as much as I want to give Scott Burns a lot of credit for coming back, which I do, welcome back Scott Burns, there are some issues with this being a little too dense and muddy at times. Like, there are layers in here I feel that kind of get buried, like namely the title track, Outside the Spiral, that features Steve DiGiorgio, and honestly I really couldn't hear him.
Yeah.
Which was weird because I heard the bass in other songs way more clearly. But again, it's his first time back in a while, and I'm just glad he's back because he's mixed some of my favorite albums ever. And sometimes, like, some of the melodic choruses didn't hit. Outside the Spiral, for the title track, I'm not like the biggest fan of the chorus on it. I think the rest of it is really cool. Like, that one gave me huge Strapping Lad vibes. The strange off-time drums, the very dissonant layered guitars.
It sounds like something straight up Devi would write.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and we're talking like old Skullet Devi, like, not current nice Devi. But yeah, this was an absolutely nuts listen and very difficult to describe. And if you're going in thinking it's going to sound like Atheist, you're going to be dead fucking wrong. but I think it's going to sound like something absolutely strange and chaotic, and I don't think you're going to hear anything like this the rest of the year. Overall, though, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars, bordering on a 4. I think with more listens,
Yep.
I think this is going to grow on me more. Man, dude, this is genre blending that I really have not heard done like this. Like, this is insane. You have some of the most brutal moments on the album matching up and layering with some of the most melodic moments on the album. You have blast beats and nasty breakdowns, but like clever, clean vocal hooks, like Alice in Chains and Carcass in the fucking same song. That's
Yeah.
It's hard to describe. It really is, and it is such a cathartic, twisted listen. And honestly, like I was just kind of sucked into it. It's kind of its own little strange universe of music and chaos. If you are a fan, again, I get big Strapping Young Lad, Alien, or City vibes. But also, I mean, there's definitely death metal on here. There's sludge metal. Just check it out. This is just a weird listen. Check it out.
I'm at a 3.5 as well, and I gotta be honest. This record took so many twists and turns. Like the first couple songs, I was like, well, yeah, it's a 3, but it gets better, and it's I don't know how to describe it. Like I honestly need more time with this record because it's just so many things that I've heard before, but not presented like this. It's not prog, but it is. So like, if you're gonna go into it thinking that you're gonna hear Atheist, you're not gonna hear Atheist, but you will hear the style that they present, just put out there in like a 90s alternative grunge sludge fashion that meets death metal and black metal and a bunch of other shit.
Yeah.
It's a weird listen. It's very hard to describe because there's so much going on, and normally that kind of chaos doesn't work. But here it does. I don't know what to say other than the fact if you're a fan of Down, Strapping Young Lad, Alice in Chains, Carcass, American Head Charge, Ministry from the Deftones, Morbid Angel, Faith No More, Down the Sun, you name it. There's just a bunch of things in here that make it crazy yet entertaining. It's a 3.5 for now, but this is a definite adventurous listen and a great time, and that's all I can say.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below, thrallsmetal.com, which, yeah, it's still under construction, but there's also a link to our Patreon on our YouTube channel. And when our site comes back up, there will be shirts in it, and you'll know beforehand because, well, we're going to show you them in a video and definitely do a giveaway for them.
And, of course, as you know, we've begun promoting shows for Innovation Concerts. Frankie's is back open, a venue here in our hometown that we have come to adore over the years. Seen hundreds of shows there. Anyway, October 1st, $25, Revocation, Unearth, High Command, and Entheos are going to be there, which is a hell of a comeback show for Frankie's. I recommend strongly that you are there. I, for one, am glad to have this venue back and glad to have metal returning to the Toledo area. Last but not least, thank you guys. Thank you to each and every single one of you that continue to show up, and those of you that have subscribed and you like us and you comment, and just the constant barrage of things we get here from Thralls of Metal is really insane. I can't believe it to this day that we're as far as we are, but it's not because of us. It's more because of you guys. Thank you so fucking much.
So I'm going to cut this off a little bit quick because the battery's starting to die, but we love you motherfuckers, and we will catch you later.